Discipline Life podcast, the place where we talk all about power differential relationships and domestic discipline. I'm Aria, and this is my husband, Coda.
Hello, everyone.
And today is our first day recording video for our Patreons. So
Hello, Patreons.
So if you are interested in getting the video form of the podcast and unlocking bonus content, then follow the link in the description box and join us over on Patreon.
That's right.
So today's podcast topic is one that I feel like we get asked a lot. And that is really, it boils down to how to work through societal stigmas around the concepts that we use in domestic discipline.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
And so really what that comes down to is, how do you work through feelings of, because at least in Western societies, we are raised in this very egalitarian, everyone is equal in society. And I agree with that. I think that everyone should be equal in society.
Absolutely.
But when we're building our power differential relationships, they're not equal. And so how do we work through really the hard ingrained concepts from society, from childhood, from our families? How do we work through those to have a successful power differential relationship?
Yeah, and defining that definition of equal. Some people don't understand that equality doesn't necessarily mean the same.
Right.
Kind of thing. So this will be a good topic today. So do you have some place you wanted to start? Because I know we could go all over the map.
I was about to say, why don't you start and we'll see where this goes.
Well, okay, this could be dangerous. But I think one of the biggest stigmas that people have when it comes to domestic discipline is they think it is, and this is going to sound like a broken record, they think it's a dictator-doormat relationship with that.
Right. They think that the husband or the leader in the relationship is really just dictating rules and dictating consequences, and it's not a collaborative effort.
It's not collaborative. You get no say. It's, again, ruling with an iron fist, and that other person is eventually, broken down, and their emotions are gone.
And almost treating the wife or the submissive partner in the relationship like a piece of property, like a commodity, like something to be managed and owned rather than a relationship.
Yeah, and as we've talked about before, realizing that in this relationship it was something that, at least in our relationship, that was asked for.
Right.
That was something that, like you said, was brought to the table. We talked about. We then started, and then with whatever didn't work, we came back to the drawing board several times if necessary, and sometimes still do, and iron out the kinks and get it to a certain place.
Well, and I think that an important aspect is, unless you are raised in either a family culture or a societal culture where power differential relationships, and especially the use of domestic discipline, is used and understood, and the kids kind of at some point understand the concept of having a discipline dynamic in an adult relationship. Unless you both come from that background, it's going to have to be talked about. Someone's going to have to bring it to the other person. It's going to have to be a conversation, and someone is going to be asking the other person to get on board with this concept.
Yes, and that you brought up a good point about how you were raised in a family. Depending on your family background, where mine was not like this at all, and so I had no point of reference on this. In fact, a lot of the concepts to me did seem from the is it outset or onset? Almost like, are you sure you want me to do that? That almost sounds abusive. And then I had to understand it's not abusive within the right context and things like that, just because that was not my family background. That's not what I knew. And I did have a good father who taught me to respect women and to be a gentleman and to do all those things. And so this was just a different concept when I heard about it.
And I think that being from the United States, and I would say that this is true of most Western countries at least, there is a expectation of partners being equal and having a sense of equality in relationships. It's not widely taught to have this hierarchical type of leadership.
Right. No, definitely not. It's definitely not. And then once you implement it into your relationship, this is not something that we talk about other than with you guys, because it's still it would not be a cultural norm within our families
No,
that
not
they
at
would
all.
understand or respect. And so this is something we keep to ourselves, again, other than sharing with you guys. And so that comes with its own fair share of different things, because we purposely keep it quiet and all those kind of things, because it just would not be something that would be accepted. It's too bad that we can't talk about it with other people, to an extent. But then Arya and I also have said we want to keep it as part of
Right.
our relationship. We don't need to be going out and sharing everything that happens in our relationship. And I won't go off on that tangent. I could, but I won't. Just the way the world is sometimes.
Oh, the oversharing that seems to be prevalent.
Yeah, in our culture. Okay, I'll talk about it just a little bit. So, not to get political or anything. There's my line. I haven't used it in a few weeks, but that seems to be our norm right now in our culture and stuff. Is we just share everything, and Arya and I have talked about several times, not on the podcast, but just each other. Like, we would really like to return to the days where what is kept private was kept private, and not just expose everything and share everything on social media and everything else. We obviously share it with you guys, and but that you are our small circle of people that we want to share that with, and to try to help and to bounce ideas and different things off of. But that's different than just blatantly blaring the horn and sharing all this with everybody.
And we've made some good friends through our online platforms.
Absolutely,
and through the podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that there is value in being able to talk like wife to wife and talk husband to husband.
Absolutely.
And have conversations that don't breach that level of personal information,
Right.
because there is a certain level of privacy that is warranted within a relationship.
Absolutely.
But there is value in being able to have conversations around these subjects.
It's always about that balance that we talk about in life. It's too much on either side of the pendulum can be really bad sometimes.
Well, and maybe having an entire episode about finding community would be
maybe that's a new.
That would be a good
Let us know in
topic.
the comments if you like that as an idea for an upcoming podcast.
So we've
title.
kind of identified the issues with why people have these stigmas.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly, I guess right now, what exactly are the stigmas that you have felt from society as far as our relationship is run?
Well, I can tell you, I don't know if I should bring this up, but I will. We have a religious background, as many of you might, and we don't talk about that a whole lot because we don't want it to be, we don't want to ever pigeonhole ourselves. So the only thing I'm going to say is that we have to be really careful in our religious circles, because we're not sure how they're going to feel about it. and
rightfully so. There has
Right.
been a history of abuse,
right.
and of oppression within that realm that we
Sure.
want. That I feel like the mainstream religious people have worked really, really hard to step away from those abuse systems, that they may view what we do unfairly as a
Right.
return to that.
That's what I was going to say. And in stepping away from those things, which was a good thing, however, again, in stepping
We've
away from those things, they may have
gone a little too far the
too
other
far,
way
and
where
now we've
there's
got
no
prejudgments.
balance.
Yeah, and there's no balance. Thank you. So that's number one of things that I've experienced. I think another thing is, again, this stigma of that I'm doing, especially early on, that I'm doing something wrong, even though you asked for this, and we talk about it in our relationship, and nothing is done without consent.
Mm-hmm.
I think, especially early on, boy, it was really hard to go, is this right? Is this okay? Is this something that, my wife is saying she's okay with, but is she really just kind of...
So really what it boils down to is a lot of second guessing yourself.
Yes, thank you. That lot of second guessing.
Your leadership, your decisions, your
all of it. All of it. And again, because I had never been in this leadership role before, and part of, like, I don't want to say I was never allowed, but it wasn't like it was a...
You didn't feel empowered.
Empowered, there you go. And words are hard today. And and yeah, second guessing the decisions, because I had never been empowered again to make those decisions. So even if I thought they were right, I was still going, oh, geez, was that the right decision? Was it? And a lot of second guessing, a lot of soul searching, which these are not bad things. Like, I guess I want to say that's how it started. And then those things helped me mature
I was going to
into the
say,
relationship better.
Do you feel like once we introduced this into our relationship, that really propelled growth towards maturity within our, as a husband within our relationship? Do you feel like that really propelled you to grow?
Yeah, because here's, all right, another bearing the soul time. Arya didn't marry, she married a fixer-upper, like, big time.
Although, conventional advice, and I completely agree with this, do not get married to someone with the intention of fixing them.
Right? No, and she didn't. Like, I don't want this to be a thing where she's like, I'm going to fix him.
There was just a lot of opportunity for growth. We'll put it that way.
Thank you for putting that delicately.
I really loved and appreciated who he was, and that hasn't changed. It's just there was a lot of growth that
and there was a
happen.
lot of growth because, and this is not to throw my parents under the bus, I have wonderful, loving parents who cared for me and did the absolute best that they could. The problem was
they raised a child.
They did, and I did not know how to be a grown man, which, if any of you men are listening, maybe you came from that same upbringing. I didn't know how to be a grown-up man. I knew how to be like a teenage guy, and that was about it.
And on the flip side, my points of growth, just so that we're not being unfair.
I appreciate that.
I was extremely parentified as a child, so I was very, very mature, but I was also used to taking care of my authority figures and I didn't have a concept of submission. And
because you didn't really have much of a childhood. You were always having to...
Right, and so I was very mature. I was very level-headed, but in some ways I was very emotionally immature, and I had no concept of collaborating, of submitting, of, respecting authority figures within the home, and I really didn't have a concept of, asking for help and having someone come alongside me and help me. I was very, very independent, but almost detrimentally so. So if I just don't want people to think like, oh, I was this great, fully formed person, and you were the one that needed.
He
growth.
was the one. Well,
we all needed growth.
No, I appreciate that, and so in my situation, because of that, I had to learn a lot about what it meant to be a man, what it meant to be a father, a husband. And so then within, and honestly, this is where I praise domestic discipline. It has helped me, hopefully Aria will agree with this, it has helped me become a man more. It has helped me become a better husband, a father, and I've learned what it means to lead a home, to be the leader of my family, to learn how to make decisions that you may not 100% at the time go, this is the right decision, but you have to make it, and you have to give the impression that you are making this decision and it's the right decision and we're going to go this way. Because in those moments, that's what she needs, that's what your family needs, and so you can't let on that it's the right or the wrong decision, or that you're going, boy, I sure hope that when we turn right here, this is going to be the right one, because it might not be, but it's given me the confidence to be okay with it and grow in that way. That was something I desperately needed, because I was very much timid, I would say, unsure of myself, felt like, because this needs to be a quote-unquote partnership, which it still is, but it needs to be this partnership where, boy, if she needs to help me make all the decisions. I can't do all of that, and I'll let you kind of speak to this. I won't put words in your mouth, but maybe this is a good segue over to you, is that you were like, I don't necessarily want to always make these decisions and everything. I need you to like step up and do some of this stuff.
Well, and I was going to say the societal pressure and the family stigmas that I came to the table with, being born in the 80s, growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, I grew up in a society that told young women not to depend on men and not to submit to men, and that men are inherently dangerous, and that you can have it all and you need to have it all and you need to,
I like where you're going with this, because
you have to make sure that you take care of yourself. Don't depend on anybody else to do anything for you,
especially a man.
Yeah, and so and then growing up in a family structure where my parents' relationship was very tumultuous, and there was a good chunk of my childhood that my mom was a single mom. And that's kind of its own whole story. But eventually my parents did get remarried to each other. But it was a rocky road. And so I saw my mom for the majority of my formative years be this independent woman. And I saw how much better her life was when she didn't have the baggage of this toxic relationship. And so I really, even as a little girl, I was like, I know that I want to be a mom, but I honestly thought I would be a single mom. I don't know how I expected to do that.
I mean, I'm sure they find a way these days.
I was about to say there's so many avenues, but I don't know if I was thinking about that at 8 years old, but I was like, no, I'm going to have my kids, and I'm going to be a single mom, and I'm going to work, because I saw relationships as inherently bad. And I think that came from so many different things. When I met Coda, I had kind of changed. At that point, I had kind of changed my mind about marriage and about what it meant to be an adult and be in an adult relationship. However, I was still very much in this mindset of I need to make sure everything's taken care of. I can't really rely on anyone else. If I don't do it, it's not going to be done. It's not going to be done well. And once we once I became a stay-at-home parent, and it really became like, hey, we have, one budget that we have to, and we always did when we were married.
Yes, we did. We still do.
Yeah.
We still do.
But once it became like, okay, I'm not earning any income here, so my contribution has now become managing the finances, managing the household to make the most use of what we have.
And our hardest part, homeschooling our daughter, which she does very well.
At that point, I wasn't doing that. She was a baby. But,
that's right.
But once we introduced domestic discipline, it really gave me a sense of security in his leadership, and it gave me a sense of really being able to submit freely. And that's the benefits that I've seen in my own life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did we make that shift?
To domestic discipline?
Well, no, just how did we make that mindset shift from, having this idea of like society's ideals and how we were
Well,
raised and our family's morals and ideals that we were raised with?
I think part of it, well, okay, I'm going to just speak to me because, again, I don't.
We had very different childhoods.
What we did and what may have sparked it for Arya is different than mine. What finally convinced me after she came to me and talked to me about this, part of it was my religious background. I actually felt like I think this fits with what I believe. And so I think this is okay to implement because I see that I feel like this is the way I should be living, and I've tried to live my life according to what I believe religiously, like I'm sure many of you do, who have a religious background. And I think the second thing is I saw the benefit of how it would help our relationship. Mm-hmm. We were not in a bad place when domestic discipline came our way, but I also look back and realize our marriage was not as healthy as it could have been. We did not have we both longed for a very, very deep connection with one another that we just were getting stalled. Every time we'd get close to that point, it was like we're almost, I missed it by that much, right? And I felt like this could help our relationship, help us grow closer together. Mm-hmm. Because I thought if I start being a better husband, I start being a better father, and I'm someone that she can confide in and say, I trust him. He's going to help me get better at the things that I want to get better at. All of these things that go along with domestic discipline, that it would make our relationship better and we'd grow closer together. And it has. I feel more connected to her to the point when I screwed up too. Like I feel the effects more than I ever have. Not that I didn't ever feel bad. Like, oh, I've hurt her feelings and I don't feel bad about it. But I feel like the effects are worse because we are so close, and it has made us so close.
So really it just you shifted your mindset to become a better leader by understanding the responsibility of that role.
She said it better, as always, but yes.
And I think that that's what it really comes down to, because I think that from an outside perspective, and when you're first kind of looking into this concept, it can be easy to misinterpret the role of the leader, to say he doesn't really have to work at this relationship. He's being catered to. He's being served. He's setting the rules to, his
liking or what he thinks
to his
should
benefit.
be benefit. There you go. There's the word.
But really, the role of leadership comes with so much responsibility. And I think when you realize that, and you realize that you have to approach leadership with a sense of responsibility, to know that you are responsible for your household. You're responsible for the well-being of your wife. You are responsible to hold the standard. You're responsible to set the standard and then hold the standard. Yeah. And that weight of responsibility is not for the faint of heart,
No, it is not. No, it is not.
And so you really have to consider taking on that role and what that really means before you do it.
Yes, and if I may, just for a minute. Yeah, when she says that role of responsibility is not taken lightly, I'm going to say something and then I'll kind of explain it because it could be taken wrong. But if you want all the power, to a certain extent, you have to have all the responsibility.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. There we go. There you go. There's
where does that come from? That's a quote from Batman.
Spider-Man.
Okay, Spider-Man.
Sorry, I'm a comic book nerd. But that is so true. And so one of the reasons I was very, not trepidatious, but very cautious at first about entering into this type of relationship is I knew I would get a lot more say. I would have a lot more freedom than I've had to do certain things and enforce certain things that I wanted to enforce. However, I got all the responsibility, and there are times where, and I try to keep it away from Arya as much as possible because I don't want through her seeing me agonize over a decision or lament over a decision, it to affect her. So I try to do things not in secret, but in a way where she's not being affected a lot.
You want me to trust your leadership by seeing it
Yes.
as a solid foundation of our relationship.
Yes, and so the times where I am lamenting over a decision and it is hard and difficult, those are the times it reminds me, okay, this is the part of the relationship that's hard because now you've got to make a decision. Everything is riding on whether or not this decision is right or wrong. And again, sometimes I've made a decision just going, I have no idea. This is 50-50. All I can do is make a decision right now based on what I think is best with the knowledge that I have. Sometimes, and actually, hopefully Arya would agree with this, the majority of the time, I think it's been okay. There's been a couple times, though, man, wish I could take that back. But that's the biggest thing. Now, I said the negative side of it. The plus side of it is that I do feel empowered. It does give me confidence, and I do feel
it plays into that masculine energy that is
yes,
natural.
Thank you. It really does. Yeah, it plays into it plays into the masculine energy that I feel like I need to have to be a man, to feel manly. And I know that probably sounds like crazy, like, oh, I need to feel manly, but to a certain extent I do. I need to feel that I'm a man. I can take care of this. I'm strong. My family's depending on me. My wife is behind me, and I'm strong and I can take care of this.
Well, and to rabbit hole just a little bit, most men need to feel manly.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Most men don't have jobs that play into their masculine energy. Most men in society aren't things like lumberjacks and
I am definitely not a lumberjack.
or oil rig workers or something that
or
feels
auto mechanics and
right, something that feels really manly. And so when
by the way, if you are those things, props to you.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
For sure. But we definitely, men need to feel that masculine energy, and when they don't get it at work, and even if you're working a quote-unquote masculine job, if you have a boss that is just riding you, that can take the masculine energy away from the job, right? And so, if you're not getting it from work, you're not getting it from your relationship. That's why so many men fall into playing video games, into, other forms of stimulus on the internet. I'm sure you can fill in the blanks there.
Yeah.
And not to say that they're not responsible for the decisions that they're making. They absolutely are. But men need that masculine place in their lives, and a lot of destructive habits can be in pursuit of that. And when you can really play into that masculine energy within your relationship and get that fulfillment from your relationship, you don't have to look for it outside.
Yeah, and thank goodness what you just talked about earlier. Though I never fell into any of those things. Thank goodness. And if you have, there's no judgment here. That is sad, and I know it's hard. And those of you who might have come back from
and
that, I applaud you.
There's people that do certain things that they're not issues, right? They're not not an issue in their relationship.
No.
They don't take away anything from their families. So to each their own on that, but that's something that if it can easily become an issue.
And so I was thankful I never fell into those things. But what did happen to me that I didn't even realize had happened was other aspects of my life. I started cowering away from those things and away from risks taking and things that would really benefit my family, because I didn't even realize there was something missing in our relationship. And so then when I started doing the domestic discipline things, it has helped me in other aspects of my life, not be afraid, not to be scared, to follow through. I think, I don't know if you would agree with this, but in other aspects of my life, because of our relationship, because of our domestic discipline relationship, I think I'm more bold in certain areas than I was before. I'm more
Yeah.
willing to say, no, I'm not doing that, or I'm not going to do this, and
And
you're wrong about that, whatever it is, and stand up for those things.
I think part of that is because you are older. Part of that just comes with age
I'm
and
an old
experience. But part of that is I feel like you feel more empowered to be in charge of your life.
Yes, and I feel that Arya has faith in me and in the decisions I'm going to make now, because the domestic discipline has trickled down into every aspect of my life, and she sees that I'm using it in other areas of my life to make decisions and to be bolder and to do all of those things. And so hopefully by seeing all that too, that has built your trust in me, that when we have something to do in our relationship, that I'm going to follow through and I'm going to be the leader that she wants me to be for our home.
And that trust is still building because, again, my stigmas that I've had to work through is building more trust and being able to submit to those decisions and that leadership without always needing an explanation, without always needing to have a contributing voice.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but realizing that submission doesn't necessarily mean that you let go of yourself, or that you are somehow now a lesser person,
No.
or that you no longer get a say of any kind. That's not, you're not losing anything by being submissive.
No, not at all. Because when it's appropriate, you always want my feedback. You want my input. You want to have a conversation. And then you take that into consideration, and that weighs heavily into your decision making. And I know that. And so I have trust and I have confidence.
But then at the same time, again, correct me if I'm wrong, knowing that you don't have the pressure of that decision to make, that I'm going to make it, but you've gotten a chance to say your piece, but you don't have the pressure like, oh, geez, I've got to make this decision too. No, this is something he's going to make.
Yeah, for sure. Now, that's not to say that I don't make decisions in our home.
No.
Like the day-to-day running of the home, the majority of the decisions when it comes to our child, when it comes to, I still make a lot of those. Like when we first moved to the city we're in now, I was the one that called around and found a pediatrician. I was the one that called and found a dentist.
Yeah.
I didn't ask for your input or approval on those decisions because that wasn't necessary, and you trust me to make those home management decisions.
Yes.
But when it comes to the big stuff, when it comes to the goal-oriented decisions, that's when you step in and you make those calls.
Yeah, and that's definitely one I do want to get across. It's not that she is just inept to make no decision. That I have to make every decision. No, because you don't want that either in your relationship. Like, I do not want to be making decisions all the time that, like, I'm not a micromanager. People that are around me know that I'm not somebody that likes to tell every single person exactly what they need to do at every single moment when they need to do it. That gets exhausting, and I don't want to be that kind of person.
So like I make decisions about like what we eat.
Yes, because I usually do not want to make that decision.
But I do that with your tastes in mind.
Yeah. Or she'll say, hey, I have two choices for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, hey, what should we eat tonight? I'm like, I don't know. That's your department.
But it really funny story, just side note here, is I never weaponize my power in the relationship because that's not submissive and that's, undermining his authority. But my grandma would completely, I've told you this story, haven't I?
You have. I know this is good, though.
She would weaponize her power and her decision making in the home. And when her and my grandpa were not in a good place, we knew about it because we always had stir fry for dinner that night because he hated stir fry. He was in the Vietnam War. That was his second war
Okay.
that he was in. He was a
Okay.
career military man. And so after his deployment in Vietnam, he really did not want to eat any type of Asian food. And so in their era, you know, the Americanized version of stir fry was basically what people had for Asian food here.
Right.
At the time. That was pretty much it. And so anytime she was kind of mad at him, she would make stir fry for dinner. And it was so funny.
So
but
what do you make for dinner when you're mad at me? No, I'm just kidding.
I was about to say,
I'm
I
just
make
joking.
what is on the plan because I don't weaponize my decision-making
and
power.
that's a great thing great way that you segued into. Excuse me. Don't use either person in the relationship. Don't use this as a way to weaponize when you're mad at your spouse, to weaponize against them. One of the worst things I think you can do as the dominant person in this relationship, or leader, as I'd like to call it, it could be easy. It really could, for me to really weaponize my authority over her if I want to. If, boy, you know, I feel like she wronged me, and so instead of actually following through with what we've set up in the rules, that if there's disrespect that happens and stuff, there's consequences. She knows that. Instead of just realizing, oh no, we've set that up and following through with that, you go, oh no, now I've got to play a little bit of the revenge game. It's not just enough to follow through with that, but now I've got to kind of get revenge on that. Don't do that. That's petty, and that's actually going to hurt your relationship and hurt what domestic discipline is actually supposed to do.
And I was going to say, I feel like one of the things that has really been beneficial to our relationship is the fact that we don't have to argue because there is consequences for behaviors.
Yes.
To where if you feel I've disrespected you, you can take a step back, you can assess the situation, then you can give me the consequences as warranted. You don't have to argue with me. You don't have to fight. You don't have to kind of, you know, pawn for your position. Right.
And that was something that Aria will tell you took me a little while to realize, because I would get upset about stuff, and she'd be...
Because it's hard to reshape behaviors.
Yes. And so she'd go, you realize that you have the power to... She'd almost say, you have the power to discipline me here, because I realized I was being disrespectful, and you're being frustrated about it when you don't have to. Just tell me you're going to suffer consequences for that, because you know the rules, and you're not supposed to do X. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, yeah. I don't even really have to get upset about it. I just go, you know what? That was over the line, and you're going to pay the consequences for it. And that is actually good, too, because then you don't punish out of anger. You don't punish out of resentment. You don't punish out of revenge. You punish because you go, you stepped over the line, you know you did, and we need to get our relationship back on that good, plain, whatever. I can't think of the word right now. Again, words are hard to
Back on track.
Thank you. Get back on that, and the way to do that is through that punishment. And then you could say, hey, I took care of the communication aspect of by following through with punishment, to say that is not okay what you just did to me, and she knows it now. And then you can let it go. Mm-hmm. As soon as the I will tell her all the time, as soon as the punishment is done, it's done. It's over. Mm-hmm. We don't have to.
Now, that's not to say that you completely forget, because if I was disrespectful and was punished for it, and then I was immediately disrespectful again, like within a few days, then the punishment would progress.
Yes.
So it's not that you're like, oh, it's completely wiped clean, forget about it. No. If there's an issue that is ongoing, you want to address that accordingly.
Yes.
But you don't bring it up. You don't keep it on a score chart. You don't use that as a way to, you know, I feel like the death of relationships sometimes is you always, you never statements.
Right. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
You always disrespect me. You never help me. Those always and never statements can be the death of a relationship. So you don't want to keep that scorecard. You don't.
Yes,
so once
we do not keep scorecards.
So
here.
Once a punishment is done, it's like, okay, that's no longer on the scorecard.
Yep. Because, like you said, scorecards are not helpful. And people love especially if they get into an argument, which we don't have anymore because of domestic discipline.
Not
relationship.
often.
I don't even call them arguments; they're discussions, and if they happen to turn into arguments, that's usually when punishment happens. But the thing that people usually bring out in arguments are scorecards. Well, back in July of 2020, you did this. Don't do that. That's not helpful.
No.
Let the scorecard go after that. Let the other person be able to know that the punishment has happened, that you're going to learn from it, both sides, and move on. Move on. Don't keep score. Because you're right. That is a death of a relationship. It really is. It really is. Did we cover it?
So I don't really feel like we covered the topic that we intended to cover.
Maybe we'll retitle this. I don't know.
We might have to. But I would say that really to work through stigmas that you grew up with is to develop a sense of your role and understand the responsibility and the position of that role, whether it's the submissive side, whether it's the leadership side. Understanding the weight of your role and developing your sense of what that role means and really stepping into that. Making sure that your relationship is consensual and everyone's participating freely. And communication with the person you're in a relationship with.
Yeah.
And making sure that they're good, you're good, and really getting to that point in place where it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Because at the end of the day, if you are in your own relationship, you're in your own home, would we be upset if our parents found out about this? Honestly, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be upset. We would probably have to draw some boundaries and say, okay, you know about this now.
Especially my family.
But it's not up for discussion.
Right. Especially, like I said, especially my family. That would be a hard discussion, but I would have it and say, this is not negotiable. You don't get to have an opinion on it, and I really don't care.
And so, but that's also to say we're not going to run out and tell our families because we don't want to have that discussion.
Right. No.
And that is part of...
We don't even tell our closest friends.
Right.
Like, my best friend has no idea.
And again...
and that's okay. I don't want him to know. This is not part of something he needs to know about.
And again, would I be upset? Not necessarily. And if it ended the relationship, then that's telling of the foundation of that relationship in the first place. So... But again, it's not something we want to have a discussion about. It's a boundary we've drawn in our own life. But that's part of getting rid of those stigmas, is to not invite opinions where they don't belong. And really just being confident in your decision for your relationship. And as long as Coda is... agreeable to what we're doing, as long as I'm agreeable to what we're doing, those are the only two people that matter. And that...
Sorry, I didn't mean to yawn there. Woo.
That would be my only... that would be my ending thought to kind of bring us back on topic.
Yeah,
but
the only thing I was going to add was when you were saying about, boundaries and things. Yeah, at the end of the day, this is your relationship. You don't have to justify it to anybody. It's really none of their business, the choices that you make in this. And it is okay. One of the things that this has been helpful in our relationship, and this goes with anything in life. It is okay in anything in your life, including your relationship, that when somebody gets too close to a boundary or starts to cross it, for you to say, back off. You are getting too close. This is not okay what you are doing. And I am not going to allow you to do X. That is okay. And unfortunately, we do live in a world right now that thinks that boundaries are bad. It's not. And we need to start. It would be good for us to get more boundaries back into society so we don't have a lot of this nonsense happen, especially in our relationships, because that is so precious. Our relationship is so precious. Our relationships are with the other person, that especially I'm talking to the leaders of your home, the homes out there. You need to protect it, and you need to protect it all. And she needs to know that you're going to protect it. And then when she knows that, and you follow through with that, things do even get better because she knows that. So that's all I was going to add. So
Sounds good.
I guess we'll see the
I
patrons
was about to say,
also
we're-
in the post show.
Yep, we're
So.
going to do the post show now. Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion as sporadic as it may have been. But
We made this one being a different title, but that's okay. That's all right.
But we really appreciate you being here. If you liked the video, if you liked the content, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you want the bonus content, if you want to see the podcast in video form, then click the link down below to join our Patreon. The $5 a month and up levels will get video as well as all the bonus content we offer over there. So thanks, guys.